Donald Trump's attempt at revenge against former FBI Director James Comey just got off to a disastrous start, and already it's looking less like justice and more like a massive embarrassment for the administration. Who would have expected anything else? Welcome to Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. So, after days of rumors, this morning it finally happened. Trump's Department of Justice issued an indictment against former FBI Director James Comey. Comey, of course, played a major role in Trump's election in 2016 when, just days before the vote, he announced he was reopening an investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Clinton herself has named Comey as the man that cost her the election. As all that was transpiring, meanwhile, Comey was also investigating contacts between key Trump campaign officials and the Russian government, something he chose to keep secret. American intelligence officials have widely reported that Russian President Vladimir Putin favored a Trump presidency, as he thought Trump would be transactional and easy to manipulate. And if you doubt that, check out our other videos on the Trump-Putin Alaska summit from earlier this month. Back to Comey. Trump has long claimed the Russia connection was a hoax, despite several campaign officials like Michael Cohen being convicted of illegal activities in the matter. And now, Trump is trying for revenge against Comey. MSNBC has a rundown. Now, this is a very long clip, but to understand the scope of the story, why the Department of Justice resisted the indictment, even going so far as to have several U.S. attorneys resign over the matter, and how U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, who has never prosecuted any case before, may have already botched the whole thing, make sure to watch it in its entirety. Take a look.
Former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted by a grand jury for making a couple of felonies, they say, a false statement and obstruction of Congress. Now, the case was facing serious doubts from federal prosecutors behind the scenes. And the indictment was handed down just days after President Trump pressured his attorney general to prosecute Comey. Now, legal experts and Democrats warn it reeks of political retribution. But Republicans on the Hill are celebrating the indictment, and so is President Trump, blowing up norms meant to ensure DOJ independence. We expect to hear from the president in minutes when he departs the White House. As for Comey last night, he essentially said, bring it on.
I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
Let's discuss with MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, along with a pair of MSNBC legal analysts, former federal prosecutor Paul Butler, former Manhattan Assistant DA Catherine Christian, and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Ken, I'm being told that the president is speaking right now on his way out of the White House to head to the Ryder Cup. We're going to do a tape turn, so when he's done, we'll bring that to our viewers here. In the meantime, can you just lay out this indictment for us and your new reporting about how it all went down?
Good morning, Anna. Well, it's relevant that President Trump is speaking because his statements about this case may well feature prominently in this case as the defense seeks to make the point that there's been too much pretrial publicity and that there may be selective and malicious prosecution here. But in terms of how the indictment went down, we were the first to report that it was coming, and it played out pretty much as we expected. Lindsay Halligan, the newly appointed U.S. attorney, remember, installed after Donald Trump forced out the previous U.S. attorney, his own appointee who did not want to bring this case. Lindsay Halligan, we are told, brought the case herself alone before the grand jury yesterday afternoon, and she succeeded in convincing at least 12 grand jurors to indict on 2 counts, although they failed to indict on a 3rd count of false statements. So you have the one false statements charge, another charge of obstructing Congress, all of this based on 5-year-old testimony. The statute of limitations was poised to lapse on Tuesday for this. At issue really is James Comey's assertion that he did not authorize someone, we believe Andrew McCabe, his deputy, to leak to the Wall Street Journal a story, and McCabe had said at some point that Comey did authorize it. And what we don't know is what new evidence, if any, that they have to bolster these charges, because this is a situation that has been parsed over by an inspector general and a previous special counsel, and no charges were filed. It's also important to note that no career prosecutor in that office or anywhere else in the Justice Department signed the indictment. Only Lindsay Halligan did, who, again, has never been a prosecutor. She's an insurance lawyer. Comey, of course, is asserting his innocence, and this is being seen as a watershed moment for the Justice Department. This case obviously is being celebrated by Donald Trump and his supporters as vindication for them and their long criticism of James Comey. But among current and former DOJ officials that I talked to, they are seeing this as a crisis moment where they believe their organization has been politicized and has been forced to do something that is not justified by the facts and the law, Anna.
Yeah, Ken, just to underline, you mentioned that Halligan was the person who signed this indictment, and that in itself is a bit unusual as I understand it. But there was also the fact that she presented the case to the grand jury, right? How unusual is that? And there was some awkward moments with the judge. Fill us in.
Yeah, it's incredibly unusual for a U.S. attorney to do that, particularly one who has just gotten on the job and has no criminal experience. I mean, she didn't even know where the grand jury room was. She probably had to be shown where it was. There was a little awkwardness in the courtroom because two different versions of the indictment, as I understand it, were presented, and the judge questioned what was going on and noted that Halligan had signed both of them. It had to do with the confusion, I think, over the third count being no-billed by the grand jury. But that just underscored just how new she is at this. And it's raising questions on who is going to prosecute this case. Is it going to be Lindsay Halligan, who has no prosecutorial experience? Will they have to bring in somebody from the outside? Because it appears that nobody inside that office, the Eastern District of Virginia, is prepared to do it. We should also note that one member of that office was James Comey's son-in-law, who resigned immediately after this indictment was returned.
And Catherine, with all of that backstory, how does this indictment look to you?
It's a sorry state because it's clear, and the defense will argue this, that this indictment was brought because the president demanded it. He directed that it happen. And Mr. Comey has said he wants a trial. Before that trial, his lawyers are going to try very hard to get this indictment dismissed. Why? Because of selective prosecution. He clearly was, they will argue, targeted in bad faith. He was singled out. Vindictive prosecution, retaliation for some perceived wrongdoing he did against President Trump. Overwhelming prejudicial pretrial publicity, the statements that the president has made in Truth Social, just yesterday calling him a bad and sick person, the FBI director making public statements. So even before there's a trial, this defense team is going to try to dismiss this indictment. And it's very sad when you think that instead of prosecuting because a crime has been committed, you're picking a person to go after and then prosecuting him for a perceived wrongdoing against you is a payback.
So, Lisa, we have covered other cases of other high-profile players who face similar charges. How often is a conviction actually in a case with these types of charges? And is this particular case different in your view?
What do you mean by these types of charges, right? Because we're talking about false statement or obstruction. We have seen lots of convictions on the basis of false statements. I can think of one very high-profile false statement case involving Roger Stone, who was an advisor to now President Trump and then candidate Trump. On the other hand, when we talk about these charges, as Catherine was just noting, they don't usually arise in circumstances like this. So I hate to compare this to other situations in the past.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? And you know who else is humiliated in this first day of indictment? Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is already on thin ice with her job. Bondi, of course, has come under fire for concealment of the Epstein files and conflict with FBI Director Kash Patel over the handling of the murder of Charlie Kirk. As for Trump, this is his attempt at weaponizing the Justice Department, and nobody can claim otherwise. However, this moment also testifies to his utter stupidity and ineptitude. He's already overplayed his hand here, and if the judge even lets this case go to trial, there is a small chance she might throw it out over the technicalities already mentioned. The case looks so flawed that Comey will almost certainly walk, which will just again prove Trump's corruption, his ineptitude, and further erode his political capital. Not to mention, humiliate every Republican lawmaker who supports this move. This story is developing, so remember to subscribe and check back with us for all breaking news regarding the Comey indictment. This is Occupy Democrats.